speaking specifically about one of these ideas, I want to talk about the Star Trek Legacy series. Initially, this was kind of pitched as Star Trek Titan, just following the characters that are introduced this season on Picard, but now it's being called Star Trek Legacy thanks to Terry Matalas. In a tweet, he put out this. He said, "In case you're wondering, Star Trek Legacy is what I'd call a spin-off show from Star Trek Picard, a 25th century show that explores the last generation and the next." So he's already got an idea in mind, obviously, about where he'd like to go with these characters. He's worked with them at least for 2 years on this show, and then, of course, he has a history with the franchise as well. So, he's obviously on board, but again, he's a writer, he's a producer, he's a show creator, so of course he's going to want to get his ideas out there. That doesn't really surprise me or should anyone else. And with that in mind, a few of the actors have come out and said that they're behind it too. I know that Jerry Ryan has said in the past that she's all for continue on with this character Seven. I think that Seven is now a much more complex character than she was on Voyager. So I think a lot more fans would like to see her back. I think a lot of fans like the changes that they've made with Seven. Recently, LeVar Burton was on The View, which Whoopi Goldberg, of course, is one of the hosts on, and she played Guinan. She brought up this Star Trek Legacy idea to him, and he had this to say: "What the writers have done is they have really set it up well. You've got the next generation of the next generation. The LaForge sisters, one's an engineer, the other's a pilot. We got Jack Crusher, 7 of 9. It makes a lot of sense." So I guess in his mind, he wouldn't be a part of this new series, but these characters would be. And I think that as far as the legacy characters, you definitely want to walk a line and not just make this Star Trek Picard Part 2 or Star Trek 7 or Star Trek Riker. If you're going to go a different way, really commit to that and don't make it about just the legacy characters. I think you really have to make it about the next generation of the next generation, like Mr. Burton pointed out. So I think that that's a really smart thing to say. There's also a petition on the site change.org that had over 12,000 signatures on it when I was recording this podcast to have this show made. In 2019, a similar petition was set up concerning the crew of the Enterprise featured on the second season of Discovery, and that got up to 30,000 signatures. And of course, then we got Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Now, it's not really known how much effect that petition had on the show being made. I mean, 30,000 signatures, I don't think sounds like a lot. Having said that, I don't know how effective this petition will be. So me personally, looking at this series from a fan's perspective and a critic's perspective, this is why I think it could work. For one, the starting cast is good. I mean, like I just mentioned, Jerry Ryan as Seven. I think that her character has really grown a lot and is a better character now to center a show around than she was on Voyager. I think that Todd Stashwick has been awesome as Captain Liam Shaw. I really hope that he does not have any character development this season and they keep him kind of like a douche. I mean, if he calls, Seven Commander 7, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But anything past that, any hugs or handshakes, I think is a bridge too far. I think that Todd Stashwick needs to keep Liam Shaw as a dipshit from Chicago. And that's what I want to see. I love him as that character. So I would watch a show with him as a captain, as this character. I like what he's doing so far. Also, the third season of Picard will almost definitely be the most popular season for the series. Now, it is true that it's not popular because of the cast on the Titan. It's popular because of the returning characters from the Next Generation. But if people watch this show and they learn to like these characters on the Titan, they can kind of piggyback off that success and be that much more popular. We saw this when the original shows came out. You always had characters from one show showing up on another. The first episode of DS9, you had characters from Next Generation. First episode of Voyager, you had characters from Deep Space Nine. So I think that, having that kind of segue, it works really well. Star Trek's done it before, and I think that this season is a great way to do it. Now for different reasons why I think it wouldn't work. The biggest reason, and I think that this is pretty obvious, is that streaming services as a whole just seem to be in a state of chaos right now. Good shows are getting canceled left and right. I mean, of course, Discovery just got canceled. You can say what you will about that, how good that show was, but it is getting canceled, and, it's hard to make a big budget show right now with this kind of environment. So I think that, that could stop a new Star Trek series like this coming. I don't know how invested Paramount is right now in making big budget Star Trek. And I think that Picard is mostly done using the volume, like a big green screen kind of environment. They don't go on location a lot, so I'm sure that might keep it down. But I don't know. I think that really the budget concerns of making a new big budget series may stop a new series based on the characters from the Titan. And then finally, I think that a new series like this, it might be too much like Strange New Worlds. There needs to be something about Star Trek Legacy that makes it special. You could argue that if you do have these like character arcs with like Worf for 3 episodes, and then you check on, Dr. Crusher for 3 episodes, and then B'Elanna Torres out of nowhere for 3 episodes, that might be a good way to do it. But if you just have a crew boldly going out into space, it's very similar to Strange New Worlds, especially if it's not serialized. Picard is serialized, Strange New Worlds is not. So if you make a new Star Trek Legacy show not serialized, then again, it's just so much like Strange New Worlds. Remember just a year ago when we thought, Star Trek was in its heyday and we have 5 series on the books and 1 film in production. We had Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy, and Picard. All those shows, if you think about them, are different. Discovery takes place way in the future. Strange New Worlds takes place before Kirk. Lower Decks takes place after Voyager. Prodigy takes place after Lower Decks. Picard takes place after both of them. So there is a lot of difference there, not to mention that 3 of them are live action series, 2 of them are animated series. So there's definitely differences in tone, differences in the way they tell stories. And even when we had, the Next Generation and then Deep Space Nine came on, while the Next Generation was still creating new seasons, Deep Space Nine was a lot different than Next Generation. The first season of Deep Space Nine even gave Avery Brooks a chance as Benjamin Sisko to say it plain out, I'm not Picard. That show was nothing like the Next Generation. And the more it went on, the less it became like the Next Generation, really. And then you had Voyager come on while Deep Space Nine was still on. And Voyager was probably more similar to the Next Generation than it was Deep Space Nine, but still you had Voyager in the Delta Quadrant. You kind of did the same thing with Voyager that they did with Discovery by putting them in the 32nd century. Voyager was in an area of space that nobody had ever been before. So outside of the, random encounter, you really were meeting alien species and characters and going to places that we never would have heard of or seen in a prior Star Trek series. There will be a time difference. Obviously, there's a couple of centuries, I think, separating the crew of Strange New Worlds and what's going on now in Picard. But I don't think that's enough to make it that much different. I think that you really need to have something that makes this show stand alone and isn't just like a more updated version of Strange New Worlds, because then you weaken both properties. You don't just hurt a new series, you hurt Strange New Worlds. And as I mentioned, Strange New Worlds is now the flagship of this franchise. Picard is going to be gone in 4 weeks. Discovery is going to be gone next year. So then you're just left with Lower Decks and Prodigy as of right now, along with Strange New Worlds. Lower Decks and Prodigy are both animated series. They're probably going for different audiences. So really, it's Strange New Worlds or bust right now for Star Trek. So I think that you don't want to do anything to hurt Strange New Worlds, which is probably another concern with making another series that really I don't think stands out alone that much from Strange New Worlds. Picard is different because not only do we have the legacy characters, but we also have a serialized storyline. You have 10 episodes that are all kind of moving towards one thing. Strange New Worlds is not like that. I mean, you've got Pike and you've got characters that have things going on. They had Dr. Mbenga had a storyline with his daughter that got resolved. But I wouldn't really consider that serialized storytelling like you have with Picard on this season. So again, you just gotta have something that makes Star Trek Legacy stand out from Strange New Worlds. And saying that, well, Legacy will be serialized, I think that's a wrong way to go. I don't think that Star Trek fans really want to see serialized storytelling. So in my opinion, I think that there's a way you can make it work, but I don't think it's in the conventional way of, a series and 10 episodes and we're just following them, doing stuff in the 25th century. I think that it works better as maybe it's a Worf special, like something happens in the Klingon Empire, or something happens with the remnants of the Dominion War, And now, the ship and these characters have to help Worf and Janeway. Janeway is another character that could come back in live action. She is a main character on Prodigy right now, but that is an animated series. So they could bring Kate Mulgrew back, but you don't want it to be Star Trek Janeway. Like I said, you don't want Star Trek Picard Part 2. I don't think that works. So there's really a thin line, I think, for success on this show. Would I love to see it? Yeah, I'm a Star Trek fan, but I don't want to see something that's destined to fail. I don't want to see something that people are going to say they want now and then a year from now rag on, So I don't know. I am not somebody that is convinced that Star Trek Legacy, again, as a 10-episode series, is the way to go. I think if Paramount can get Michelle Yeoh back, that a Section 31 series really is the best way, because again, Section 31 would be so much different than Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks and Prodigy. If you didn't have Star Trek at the beginning, you wouldn't even know that this series maybe was connected to these other series, and people can say what they will about that. But I think that that's really the way you succeed, is you create something that is familiar and different. And Star Trek Legacy, I think, is too heavy on the familiar and too light on the different. That doesn't mean they can come up with a good idea, but just, that one sentence pitch by Terry Matalas does not do it for me. And definitely a petition online isn't going to do it for me either. But, we'll see what happens. But let me know, what do you think of the plans for a Star Trek Legacy series? Do you agree with me, or do you think I'm nuts? Do you think that a 10-episode series following Captain Shaw, Commander 7, and, who knows who else will succeed? Let me know in the comments below. Hey everyone, Eric here. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. This was taken from my weekly podcast, WDIM News, which you can catch each Monday on this channel. If you would like to check out the full podcast, you can do so by clicking on this video here. Make sure that you not only hit the like button to help support me, but also hit the subscribe button so that you know when my new videos come out. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?